Welcome back. It's the Big Blue Banter, New York Giants football podcast. I'm Dan Schneider, joined as always my co-host Nick Falato. We're having a little fun today. We've done this the past couple off seasons. We're going to do stat projections for the New York Giants for the 2023 season, and we're going to do it the same way we've done it in the past. Nick Falato, his mathematical brain, has come up with projections for the Giants from a statistical standpoint. This is a model that he uses. It's very in-depth. He does it on a Google sheet. There's like 17 rows and columns, all using formulas and stuff that's well over my head. He comes up with it. It's the Falato projection spits out a number, and then I'm going to go over or under on it, and Nick can react to that. So this is how we do it here on the Big Blue Banter podcast. We get right into it without any preamble. The most important one, and that's Daniel Jones. So we'll start by saying this, as noted in Nick's little projection here. Daniel Jones averaged 200 yards per game in the regular season passing in 2022. Obviously not the number we're looking for, if we're going to be completely honest. But Nick has him projected for 3,908 passing yards this year. That's 229 per game. That would be a 9.82 yards per completion, which would be unbelievable, by the way, Nick. I think the comp that you came up with was Dak Prescott from 2022 and Russell Wilson from 2022. 27 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, 645 rushing yards. That's a 40 rushing yard per game, 6 rushing touchdowns. So I'm going to take this one by one, Nick. I'm going to give you an over, and I'm going to give you an or an under. 3,908 passing yards. I'm taking the over, Nick. I'm taking the over. I think this is the year Daniel Jones finally hits the 4K mark passing. The reason I'm taking the over here is I think back to what Brian Daboll did in Buffalo and what he wants to do from a schematic standpoint, from a philosophical standpoint. There were times I would read those Bills message boards, or after, I should say, the Giants hired Daboll, and I would read every fan base has their fans that are happy fans, that are sad fans, that are annoying fans, if I'm going to be completely honest. You know who you are. Hopefully not listening to this podcast right now. And typically we don't get the annoying ones. Those guys go to the Homer podcast and enjoy yourselves over there. But there are fans who will find fault in anything the team does. So there were some fans who were faulting Brian Daboll as offensive coordinator of the Buffalo Bills. Believe it or not, you can find these guys on the message board. And the main criticism they had, Nick, of Brian Daboll was he threw the ball too often. He called too many passing plays. He didn't run it.
I remember that, Dan.
Right?
Because remember, Buffalo, they lost to Jacksonville in like week 6 or 7 when Jacksonville sucked. And everyone was losing their minds. And I think they also opened that season losing to the Pittsburgh Steelers. I don't know why I remember this, but I think so. Yeah, and it was a similar thing. But Pittsburgh also, they started doing this funky stuff with their defense because they were traditionally a very zone-heavy team. I think they went to more man coverage and maybe caught Josh Allen, also spy Josh Allen, caught them off guard a little bit. But I didn't mean to derail where you were going with that.
No, it was a good because that was a good point. People were calling for Daboll's head after that Jacksonville game when the other Josh Allen had like 4 sacks. But I don't think he believes it's a fault to be throwing the ball that often. I think in his mind, he views that he can scheme up a passing game that can be an extension of the running game, where the ball can be out of the quarterback's hands so fast that it is essentially a run play and it doesn't carry the same risk as a typical pass play. So I think he did what he did last year because the Giants had offensive line problems and because they had personnel issues from a skill talent standpoint at the wide receiver position. But now that a lot of that has been solved, hopefully with the offensive line, that remains to be seen. But I do think John Michael Schmitz is a big upgrade, and I'm hoping Neal can be healthy and an upgrade as well. But if all those things check out, Nick, and it goes back to what we saw in the preseason on that one drive, man, that was pass heavy as hell. If those things check out, he's going to want to throw the ball. And I think the Giants will end up being top 5 or top 10 in passing, in neutral passing rate. And if they're up to top 5, I think Jones is going to have a really good opportunity to hit that 4K mark. So I'm going to take the over on passing yards. I'm going to take the over on completions at 398. I am going to take the under at 9.82 yards per completion because that, like, I know it compares. Maybe I'm just off on what YPAs are around the NFL, but where would that rank last year among quarterbacks?
9 point. That's per completion. I have to look that up because
that's per completion. That's per completion. Yes. Okay, take back everything I just said. I was thinking of it per attempt because if you get to 9.82 per attempt, you're like the best quarterback in the NFL. But per completion, it's a little bit different. We don't have attempts here.
It would have been in the bottom third.
Okay. Okay, so I'm going to take the over then. I'm going to take the over. No, wait. take it back. Still think most of this offense is going to be short passing game. We're going to have some bigger plays, but it's still operating quick, get open, create separation, throw the football, move the ball. So under on that, over on the first two, 27 passing touchdowns. Woo! That's a spicy number, Nick. It would be a career high for Daniel Jones. Yes. Obviously at 15 last year. What did he have the year before? 14, I believe it was.
I think it was like, wasn't it like 9 or something? No, it's 10. No. 2021.
It was 10. So you had 15 and 10. So that would be more passing touchdowns this year than the past two combined. But they were Jason Garrett years. This is a Brian Dable year. 27 is a big nut. It's a spicy number, though.
It's a spicy number, and the betting line is 17.5.
Holy shit. I love it.
Yes, yes. And I'm not even sure if I'm fully confident, but I do believe there's going to be positive variance on the side of Daniel Jones. I just think throughout this kid's career, there were so many times, and I guess a lot of quarterbacks can say this, a lot of fans can say this, where Saquon Barkley got 1-yard touchdowns because Golden Tate got tackled at the 1-yard line, or Isaiah Hodgins, or whoever it was. And I think there's going to be some positive regression in favor of Daniel Jones when it comes to just throwing touchdown passes. But I agree, man, 27 is a lot, but that's kind of what I want to say. I'm not putting a number on, hey, I would need you to get 27. But if we want or believe Daniel Jones can take the step that we think is possible, he has to throw more than 15 touchdown passes.
For sure. I mean, 15 for sure. It has to. I'm with you on that. I'm debating what to do with this over under, Nick. On one hand, I want to take the over because I feel like one of the biggest areas Daniel Jones jumped was red zone. It's kind of insane. And yes, part of that is coaching, but part of that's him, man. He's getting out of the pocket, and he has now a plan with these receivers when he's on those scramble type drills for where he wants them to move, each one of them, to get open so they can present a target for him to throw to. And toward the end of the season, he was really freaking valuable in that way, throwing passing touchdowns that shouldn't have been passing touchdowns, that were literally created by his ability to maneuver and manipulate the pocket, and then, the scramble drill ability of these receivers, which, again, it's impressive to some extent to what these receivers can do. But let's be honest, as a play goes on for a while, it's really hard for the defense to not to stop the play without holding, which is a penalty. So it comes down to the quarterback. Can the quarterback make that play? And he can. But I will take the under on this one, Nick, because this year they faced the Bills defense. This year they faced the Jets defense. This year they faced the 49ers defense. These are tough defenses, elite top 5, basically, defenses that they did not have to face last year. I also think the Washington football team defense is going to be better this year with additions they made in the draft that fit that system well. So I'm going to take a slight under on passing touchdowns, but I think he's going to have an opportunity to get to, I would put it at 25 for passing touchdowns, which would still be a career high for Daniel Jones, beating out his rookie season number, which I believe was 24, unless it was 26. I might be getting those two numbers mixed
24.
Up. It was 24. Okay. But again, even if he does get to 25, I still view it as a success if he does add what he added last year. Last year was 7. Let's say it's 5 rushing touchdowns this year. Now you're still hitting the 30 touchdown mark in total. If you can get to the 30 touchdown mark between the passing and the rushing touchdowns, I view that as a big jump because last year he had 22 combined touchdowns. So to get to 30, that would be a good thing. So slight under, but because of the schedule. But I'm gonna go. Let's go to the next one. Interceptions, 9. So he had 5 interceptions last year. Best interception rate of any quarterback in the NFL. If we assume the passing attempts are going to go up, the difficulty of these passes are going to go up, the touchdowns are going to go up, the interceptions are probably going to go up as well. So I am going to take the over on this one, over 9 interceptions. I don't think it's going to be crazy over, Nick. I think we're probably in the 10, 11, 12 range over a 17-game season, which is not bad, especially if he's throwing for 25 touchdowns. That's a 2-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio, which any coach will ever take, I mean, that's just passing touchdowns. Doesn't even include the rushing touchdowns going to add. It'll come closer to 3-to-1 at that point. So maybe 10, maybe 11, a slight over there, but I'm going to take a slight over there. Any thoughts on those before we move to the rushing projection over-unders?
So if you're of the mindset that Daniel Jones is going to exceed the passing yards that he has recently, in terms of last year was 3206, that's including playoffs, you can get 3,300.5 yard at plus 100 right now on DraftKings. So it's just something to consider.
I don't know touchdown. The passing touchdown 17.5. I really like that over.
I like that over as well. Again, when you bet overs on these season long, it's not always a great guarantee because injuries happen. Yes. And one injury, you miss like 3 games, it could just derail your entire bet. Always keep that in mind. But when you're getting plus odds, it's worth the gamble in my opinion. I think 33. I wouldn't bet on 3,900 like I have statted out right here. I'm not overly confident in that, but I do see pathways to where that could happen. So that's one of the reasons why I have it statted out that way. But 3,300 at plus 100, it's not a terrible bet.
No, it's not a bad bet at all. All right, 645 rushing yards. That's 40 per game. Last year, he had over 700 rushing yards. On one hand, I want to say the Giants signed him to a massive contract. And this week, obviously, as those of you who follow the team really closely will note, they pushed back more of that cap hit because they need to create some cap space. They restructured the deal, which means it's going to cost more if they want to get out of it at any point in year 3. So with that in mind, I want to say that they're going to try to run him less, Nick, which is possible, that they're going to do fewer design quarterback runs. But I feel like most of what he did on the ground last year wasn't even off design quarterback runs. It was mostly off scrambles. And I don't think that's going to come out of his game because I'm not quite positive Evan Neal is going to be that amazing yet. And I'm not quite positive Ben Bredesen and Mark Lewinsky are going to be that amazing in pass protection either. So I know that he's already gotten used to when that pocket breaks down, look for the run. And so I think I'm going to take the slight over there. I don't think it's going to be just as much as last year. I think it's probably going to be like just under 700, maybe in the high 6s, but over 645. Rushing touchdowns of 6. I'm going to take the under on that one. I think it's going to drop to 5 or 4. I think the Giants are going to be, because in the red zone, they did have some design touchdown runs for him that led to touchdowns. I think they're going to be a little bit more cognizant of, one, how valuable he is to the franchise, especially now that he signed all this guaranteed money. And 2, you can probably get away with fewer design quarterback runs because Darren Waller can get open now for you early, or the rest of these weapons can get open for you now early. So, any thoughts on my rushing predictions?
I kind of like where you're at. I thought it was probably going to be lower, but Daniel Jones, what did he have? 2 games last year where he had multiple touchdowns on the ground. I think the Bears and the Colts. So all Daniel Jones needs, and Mike Kafka is going to recognize this because he's an excellent coach, is one defensive coordinator who's being a little bit over aggressive in terms of trying to contain 26. And I think that could still happen. I think a lot of defensive coordinators are aware of what Daniel Jones can do on the ground, but you could still find one who's not going to be, especially if the Giants are having success running the football, which they may if teams are playing too high defenses against them because of Jalin Hyatt and Darren Waller. Right. It's all linked, and I love it. Absolutely love it because I think Daniel Jones can have success on the ground, but 6 is kind of a lot. So I would bet the under if I was a bet man with that.
And he had 7 last year, so it's definitely in play. Okay. Saquon Barkley, last year he averaged 82 yards per game on the ground. If you had put in here, which we didn't, but it's okay, his rushing attempts, Nick, I wouldn't even need to see the number. I would take the under. I think the attempts are going to go down on the ground this year as they go to more of a passing team. As far as the yards go, you projected him for 1219, what's 71 per game, which is 11 fewer than last year. A part of me wants to be like, spread it out a little bit more, some lighter personnel looks. He could maybe be even more effective as a runner this year. Part of me wants to say that, Nick. The other part of me wants to say, a lot of the big plays on the ground last year did come out of those heavier personnel packages where they ran power gap, where they motioned the receiver in like Hodgins, like you talked about for the crap. So I don't know if my theory that lighter boxes does lead to a better rushing attack is actually true, at least for this football team, because of how much success they had with the power and gap. So with that said, I really feel like you're damn close to what the number is going to be here at 1219, but I'll go slight over there.
Okay.
And then 9 rushing touchdowns. I think the offense is going to be a lot better this year. I'm going to go over there too.
The betting lines on his over-under right now are 1050. So I have it over. People might look like 1219. That's not overly sexy, but if you look at the regular season last year, he was only at 13-12. And as you said, right. I think the Giants are going to dial it back just a little bit more. And as we're going to see here in a little bit, he's going to be involved as a pass catcher because I have him statted out for 49 receptions for 324 receiving yards, which is 6.6 yards per catch with only 1 receiving touchdown. And I really kind of battled back and forth with this number because I do think the Giants are going to try to use him a little bit more, Dan, as a receiver. That's been talked throughout training camp, but a lot of these talks throughout training camp, they don't necessarily materialize once the regular season rolls around. I still think he's going to be involved, but I think Mike Kafka and Brian Daboll are really going to do wonders with scheming the stacks and stuff like that with the tight ends specifically and those wide receivers. But when where Saquon Barkley gets a lot of his catches, if they don't use him downfield, which was a little bit of word throughout training camp, is when linebackers try to flow through a stack or through a bunch in man coverage against Saquon Barkley, who's flaring out to the flat. So he's going to get a lot of those cheap little catch the football behind the line of scrimmage, make people miss. That's why I have his receptions at 6.6. I think I said yards per catch, but that's kind of in line with where he's been throughout his entire career. Last year, he had 5.9 yards per catch. 2021, it was 6.4. And then back in 2019, it was 8.4. In 2018, when he was just checked down Charlie for Eli Manning, it was 7.9.
Yeah. And so I think before I address these, I want to say, just for those who are following along and maybe thinking about placing any wagers, just keep in mind, like, yes, the over looks pretty easy to hit here for Saquon Barkley at 1050 for rushing yards, for example. But like, remember, when you're taking overs, you're battling injuries too. And that's why it's, in my opinion, I never bet season-long overs, Nick, just to let you know. And for anyone listening who's interested, I only do the unders on season-long wagers because of the injury situation. I think the value is in the unders, and I think Vegas is very well aware that you're taking minus EV when you bet the overs. So even the ones that feel so good, it's hard for me to take. And that 17 passing touchdown one for Jones, by the way, I'm tempted to take right now, Nick. But Jones has dealt with injuries, so it's like, that's how they get you. That's how they get you. So anyway, as far as your projections for the receptions go, I want to think that if this offense evolves the way I'm saying it will, and the narrative that I've already expressed throughout the first parts of these predictions for me off of your projections, that Barkley's role in the passing game will actually shrink rather than grow. Obviously, there was the talk, like you mentioned, that it could grow. He was talking about how, they want to use him more in these interesting ways. I got to see that to believe it, Nick, because it hasn't been the case, and we're deep into the career right now, especially for a running back, as far as how long their shelf life tends to be. So I tend to think most of what he'll do in the passing game is what he did last year, those flare routes. And if he's getting a lot of those receptions, Nick, it's probably a bad sign for the offense, if I'm going to be completely honest, because it means that Jones is coming back to him in that progression. Go ahead.
Some of it is just option. Some of it is we're going to put the defense in a bind. And if they are in man coverage and this linebacker has to work through traffic, then I'm just going to take what the defense is giving me. It's not necessarily a bad sign. Usually defenses will adjust. They'll push the coverage if they're running match type principles, which I expect a lot of teams to do, especially if Saquon Barkley is catching the ball and getting 6, 7, 8 yards per clip. So I just wanted to kind of clarify that a little bit. And Dan, hopefully we will see a freaking screen actually work to Saquon Barkley, all right? Get the guy in space. Have JMS climb up to this safety. Get Mark Lewinsky's ass out there. That would be absolutely lovely.
It'd be so nice to see a successful screen game this year for the Giants. It feels like I can't even remember the last. I feel like Rashad Jennings was the last successful screen. No, they had one to Paul Perkins in 20 whatever it was, the Vikings game I went to in Minnesota that year. It was like a 60-yard screen or whatever. But man, oh man, did they struggle running screen game last year. So all that stuff for me is more see it to believe it. So I'm going to take the under for both for receptions and for receiving yards. So I can't take all overs here. I'm going to take the under for those. I'm going to take the over for receiving touchdowns, though, at 1. And obviously that's a bit of a projection, but I'm going to hope that with all the attention paid to Darren Waller in the red zone, it's going to lead to more opportunities for Saquon Barkley in one-on-ones to make a big impact in the passing game in the red zone. Okay, go ahead.
I was going to say, remember against the Green Bay Packers when the Giants had Saquon Barkley run that drag route and Devondre Campbell tried pushing it and there was nobody to push it to?
Yeah.
I think if the Giants incorporate some more spread concepts, which they will, and they're going to have air raid and they're going to do West Coast, they're very diverse. I think you're going to get Saquon Barkley out on the boundary.
Right.
It's not going to be a backside X like we talk about with Hyatt and Darren Waller because it's not a 3-by-1 set, but you're going to have Saquon Barkley out on the boundary in a spread look. And if Daniel Jones and Mike Kafka like that matchup, whatever linebacker they task to guard Saquon Barkley, they may take shots. And that's something that you and I we've had issues with because I feel like every time they attempt to take that shot, it's like a throwaway play. But if they run the drag route, it's a much simpler pass to complete. So maybe we'll see some mistakes in the secondary like we saw with Devondre Campbell and the linebackers of Green Bay.
Yeah, I think you just outlined that perfectly. They've tried to take those shots, but it feels like it's mostly been Saquon on the vertical plane. And if we're going to be quite frank, at least is what the film tells us, Nick, and you could confirm if you agree or disagree with this, but Barkley hasn't been creating that much separation when they've run those plays on the vertical plane for whatever reason. But on the horizontal plane, like you said in the Green Bay game, he created a good amount of separation there and then a big play after the catch. So everything you said there. Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say not really last year, but a little bit. If you go back to 2021, which is
yeah,
funny.
that big play against Washington, right?
Well, the play against the Chargers, he had a touchdown receiving. He had a touchdown receiving
zone,
against the Saints, which was huge in the win, where we were like, "Oh my God, Giants won! It's crazy."
Yep. Yeah, that was on that wheel route. Yeah, I mean, so we'll see if they can get him back in there. Everything you said was interesting. It made me want to go to the overs, even though I just took the unders. So I'm going to revise my picks to push. I'm not going over yet though, because I'm about to go on an over spree with this next person. So just an absolute over spree is about to hit. And here we go. We're moving on to Darren Waller. This is where the over spree engages for me. So you've got him at 70 receptions, 789 yards, which would be 11.2 per catch, 6 receiving touchdowns, and playing 14 games. I'm about to shoot overs into the world right now because I think he's going to play all 17 games. I don't believe in injury prone personally. I think it's mostly luck based. I'm going to go over on 70 receptions. So what would that let me think of what I'm going to put. Let me do a little math here real quick on a little calculator. Oh, here we go. This is great podcasting right now, trying to do a little math.
I could talk while you talk.
Okay.
So the over under for Darren Waller, according to DraftKings, is 70.5 yards, minus 115, and catches is 60.5. So I have him over with both, only playing 14 games. I don't have the touchdowns in front of me, but I'll pull that up once you're ready, and I can be done extending. Okay, you're ready. You can go.
I'm ready here. I'm ready to go. So I'm predicting he'll have 102 receptions this season. That would be an average of 6 catches per game over a 17-game sample size. I think he's also, and I said earlier on the CBS podcast, I think he's going to get up to like maybe 140 targets. I think we were looking at 135 to 140 targets for him. I think his yards per reception is going to be a little lower than you do. I think he's going to be used a little bit more in the short intermediate game. You have him above 10. I have him closer in the 9 range. So I have him just over 900 yards at 939, but that's still over on the yards. And receiving touchdowns, that's the interesting one for me, Nick. 6. I'll go with a slight over. I think he's going to get to 7 or 8. The reason I'm not going too heavy on this is because I think he's going to get so much attention in the red zone that it's going to be harder for him to actually come away with the touchdowns. And there's going to be open looks for other players that are because of him, but it doesn't actually go in his stat column in the box score. So slight over on the last one, but massive hits on the over for yards and the over for catches.
And you can get the over on DraftKings at 4.5. You get it plus odds right now.
Not bad.
So it's not bad. Again, the over thing, Darren Waller is over 30 years old. He's an injury-prone, quote-unquote, tight end. He's a tight end who has been injured in recent memory. So that's one of the reasons why you're getting some juice there. But hey, if you trust in the fact that the Giants' strength and conditioning coaches have done a good job mitigating these soft tissue injuries, 4.5 at plus odds.
Yeah.
It's not crazy. Like Darren Waller can have a 3-touchdown game. He's fully
right.
capable of doing that. I don't really necessarily foresee that, but he is capable of doing it. So
I want to take all these overs, Nick. It's bad. I may break my plan and my strategy, which is you never take an over on a season long. Now I'm questioning that because these are just juicy. It's just the Jones 15, 17.5? Waller 4.5? Come on.
The Jones 17 one isn't plus odds though. The plus odds for Jones, I think, was it was something else. It might have been the yards over 3,300. But you get it at like minus 110 or whatever the hell it is.
Yeah, do a little parlay action with Jones and Waller. All right, let's move on to the next one here. Jalin Hyatt. It's an interesting one. Role is so uncertain to me, but I like him. You have him at 36 receptions, 489 receiving yards at 13.5 yards per catch, and then 4 receiving touchdowns. Woo! What do I do with this one? I'm a little confused on this. And this is the fun thing about doing these stat projections once we get to receivers. It's easy until this point. Daniel Jones, Barkley, Waller, that was all the easy stuff. The receivers, that's when things get hard because it's not like they're coming out with defined roles with these guys. So I'll give you this. Did you want to say something, Nick? I didn't mean to cut you off. You said okay.
No, it's all you. I was just going to say it's very difficult to stat out the Giants receiving core right now because we just don't know the roles, as you said. So while I was doing this, I was like, man, this could look like come week 5, but it is what it is. It's a fun little exercise we're doing.
Yes. It's for fun. I'm going to go 36. That would be, there's going to be some games where he doesn't have many. I'm going to go slight over on receptions, but not crazy over there. but I'm going to go over on receiving yards. I think he's going to get to, so you have him averaging 13.5 per catch, Nick. I think he's going to average like 17 yards per catch. That's my Jalin Hyatt prediction for this year. He's in like that crazy number, that 17, 18 yards per catch range. And it's because of the things you've already talked about, not just the what he can do on the vertical plane from like those stutter and goes and those double moves. It's also what you talked about when they have those routes that clear out defenders and he's just running the drag underneath and he catches the ball. He's going to take that a lot of times, like 30, 40 yards. So I think he's going to smash the yardage over here. Slightly beat the receptions total. Receiving TDs of 4. I'm predicting 25.
If you think he's going to smash the yards per reception, that's where the TDs are also going to be factored in. Last year, here are the yards per reception leaders of players who were targeted and played at least 50% of their snaps. Jalen Waddle led the league at 18.1 yards per catch. Gabe Davis was second, which I don't feel like a lot of people are aware of, 17.4. I wasn't. And then A.J. Brown is third at 17. Everybody else was sub 16 with Terry McLaurin at 15.
I just predicted 17, which is insane. Let me take that prediction. No, but maybe. If that's
I don't think that's the thing, dude. I have it much less, but I don't necessarily think it's insane. But we are projecting Daniel Jones. This is one of the reasons why I statted it out this way, to take that step to actually create more explosive plays with his arms. That's one way why I have him hovering around 4,000 passing yards with all of those touchdowns. If he does that and he has the weapons to do so in Jalin Hyatt, I don't think 17 yards per catch is too crazy. If everything clicks together, which isn't certain, but if it does, that can happen. I just think the Giants are going to try stupid screens to Jalin Hyatt, and they're going to go for like negative.
Kill his average. You're right. Forgot about that. Those push passes and stuff they showed in the preseason, that's going to crush the average. That's a great point. Still taking the over, though, but I got to refrain and dial it back down to like 15 to 15 and a half. Now that I'm remembering, they're going to try all those screens that we know don't work for the Giants. The Giants can't run a screen game. They can't run with the receivers, can't run with the running backs. Hopefully we're wrong about that, and then they miraculously figure it out. But that may take a little bit more time and a little bit more talent on the offensive line. We'll see what happens there. I'm still taking the over there. All right, let's go to Isaiah Hodgins. I have a feeling I'm going to go back on an over spree for this one. And the answer to that is yes, that feeling was true. Here's my thing with Isaiah Hodgins, why I'm taking a lot of overs on him. I just look at his snap percentage from last year. We went over this last year on the Sleeper podcast, or yesterday on the Sleeper podcast. Well, I just feel like I pulled Nick Falato. I said yesterday. I didn't say yesterday. And I never do that.
How do you usually say yesterday? Yesterday.
I pronounce
it. It's not as bad as pitcher. I still don't understand how you say picture.
A pitcher versus a picture. This is the most, you understand this, Nick. We've gone over this plenty of times. You know you understand this. This is not a Devontae type of situation. You get it. You understand the picture. And I don't do the yesterdays, okay? I'm not Italian, even though as much as I want to be, I'm not Italian. So yesterday on that podcast, we went over Isaiah Hodgins. The main reason I think he's going to be a sleeper is because I just look at the snap percentage last year, and he's playing crazy high number on the outside of the boundary. And they just don't have guys, in my opinion, that can play the boundary the way that he can play it and offer the versatility of, you don't know if they're going to be running the ball or throwing the ball, because this dude's 6'4.5" and he can block. And so with all that said, I think he gets a crazy amount of snaps, and that's going to give him opportunities to crush these overs. So taking over on 52 receptions for Isaiah Hodgins, taking over on 516 yards. Though I like that you said his average would be under 10, because I think it will be. And then it's like, so I'm going to go slight over, but still over. And then receiving touchdowns for Isaiah Hodgins. I like that Isaiah Hodgins was one of the guys who I felt like benefited a lot from Daniel Jones taking that end of the season jump in the red zone. I think about that whip route he ran against the Washington, if I remember. I'm going to take the over on the touchdowns too, but probably more of a slight over there, maybe 4, 5, 6 range, but I'm going to take the over there too. So I said I was going to go on over spree, and I went back on an over spree here. I got to start taking some unders at some point, or this is just like the biggest homer podcast in the history of the Giants.
Yeah, it may, but it's okay. Like, I feel like with some of the guys we have statted out left, there are plenty of players like Sterling Shepard, Daniel Bellinger. I don't have those guys statted out, but I have Darius Slayton statted out. I have Paris Campbell, and I have Wan'Dale Robinson. I can easily see where Isaiah Hodgins and Darius Slayton, they just eat into each other's workload that I have statted out. If one of them gets injured, if one of them is playing better than the other, and the same goes for Wan'Dale Robinson and Paris Campbell. You just don't know, and that's one of the fun things about the Giants offense. You just don't know which player is going to just consume the other player's stats.
True, but let's try to do it. We got Darius Slayton, 41 receptions, 465 yards. It's 11.3 yard per catch and 2 receiving TDs. I'm going to go over and over. And I will hit some unders soon. Don't worry. Okay. But just remember, I hit over on Jones passing yards. So I have to take some overs here too, as well, to make it make sense. You got to make it make sense. And I don't do the math. I'm not Nick Falato. I have a super math brain and a spreadsheet. Just making up this whole spreadsheet thing on the spot. But I don't have anything going into these. I'm just, eyeball test here, eyeballing this whole thing out. But Slayton to me is like 11.3 yards per catch. I think he's going to crush that. But maybe, not crush it, but I think he's going to beat that. What was his yards per catch last year? Do you have that number by any chance, Nick?
Last year was 15.7. The year before that was 13. Okay. But he's been consistently hovering around the 15. I have it a little bit lighter than that because once I statted a lot of this stuff out, I had to find ways to maneuver numbers around and really just have conversations in my head as to who is going to be the one who isn't going to get as much as the other.
Yeah, and I think as you'll see with these last two, so I'll over across the board here, but then I'm going to under Wan'Dale at 37, 336 and 1, even though that feels so easy to get. I'm still going to take a slight under there. And then even Paris Campbell at 46, 480 and 4. I'm definitely under 4 on Paris Campbell touchdowns, but even at 46 and 480, I'll slide under both of those.
The reason why I have 4 though, Dan.
Over them all though, Nick. I want to over them all. I have to take a few unders here. I'm going to
let me over them all, Nick. So the reason why I have him at 4 is I think Paris Campbell is going to be a big part of the red zone passing attack. I think he's going to, and I think I've mentioned this on the podcast. I definitely mentioned it at Big Blue View. I think he's going to be like a pony personnel type of weapon, only it's going to be 11 personnel. So it's not 21 personnel. I think he's going to operate in a similar role that Matt Breida operated in when they're down in the red zone. And also we saw that it didn't work. Paris Campbell got tackled because it was a bad pass from Daniel Jones at the goal line. And I feel like every time I turn on a highlight, Paris Campbell is running a play action slide in the red zone. A highlight from training
play, by the way. That was a really nice design play. That PA slide where they got Campbell. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but that just
you're fine.
It's great.
It was fine, and I think that's going to be his role. It's going to be a low in the red zone, a low A dot roll. Let's get him a nice, easy, completed pass by the line of scrimmage and allow him to work because he's good in space. So I think that's one reason why I had him. That is one reason why I had him at 4 touchdowns.
And you sold me. So it's like, I'm overing that too now. It's just hard to take unders here when I think this passing game is going to take the jump that I think it is going to take, not only because of Daniel Jones' progression, but because of what Brian Daboll wants to get back to, which is a pass-heavy offense, one of the most pass-heavy offenses, if not the most pass-heavy offense in the NFL. That's what he wants. He probably feels like he's close to getting there. And I don't think in his mind, he thinks this is a 2-year process. I don't think he went into this saying, we'll be run heavy 1 year and then we'll be run heavy the next. I think he looked at it like, we were run heavy last year. There were reasons for it, but we've already gotten to the point from a personnel standpoint now where we can do what I want to do, which is become a pass heavy team. And that's exciting to me. So we'll close out there, Nick. This is just a fun little show here on Stat Protection.
One other thing. We have 67 unaccounted for receptions for 509 yards, 7.45 yards per catch with 6 unaccounted for touchdowns. I think a lot of that goes to Daniel Bellinger, maybe Sterling Shepard. Giants could sign another Isaiah Hodgins type of guy. Cole Beasley could get healthy. So that's a solid chunk of stats right there that are unaccounted for that will go to whoever the hell the Giants decide to throw the football to. Maybe Eric Gray, who knows?
Shout out Daniel Bellinger. Shout out Frank Bellinger, Daniel's dad. Frank sent me a little note today that he was kind of a little disappointed Daniel didn't make the sleepers list but look, Daniel's past the point of sleeper. The way we define sleeper, and I think Frank knows, we were joking around, but like, we can't call Daniel Bellinger sleeper. Every Giants fan knows about Daniel Bellinger, and we did toy with him as a potential breakout candidate as well. We didn't settle on it, but we toyed with it. So we still feel really confident about what Daniel Bellinger can offer the Giants, but I think some of it doesn't show up in the box score and the stats, and I think that's important to note. Like, a lot of what he does so well for the Giants is the stuff that helps you win football games and shows up on the All-22 film, but may not always be the box what you see in the box score stats, for sure.
There are 31 other NFL teams that would take Daniel Bellinger.
Yeah, easy.
Say that.
He'd be in the rotation on every roster, the way he blocks and the way he competes on every play. And again, there's untapped potential in the passing game. So I'm excited to see if he can account for a lot of those yards you just broke down, Nick. But anyway, that's all we have for today on the Big Blue Banter podcast. We're getting close. It's almost the start of the season, and I am very, very excited that Giants football is back. I can't wait to break down the film with you, Nick. I can't wait to do the initial reactions. That's one of my favorite times is just raw reaction, hour or two after the game. How do we feel about what we just saw on the broadcast angle? And I know a lot of the time it's like me and you rewatch the broadcast angle, which feels like you get something out of it, but then you get the real deal when you do the film stuff during the week too. So a lot of good stuff coming. We'll have one more podcast after this as well to prepare for the season. And that's where we're going to do our win projections and win predictions. We're going to go game by game on the schedule, and I'm going to see how mine compares to Nick. I'm curious to see. We're not going over it beforehand, so it's going to be all fresh. Please like and subscribe to this podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, hit subscribe, hit like right away. Bang bang. I call it the bang bang. You ever seen Louis C.K., his TV show? One of the funniest bits I thought he had was when him and his friend went to a restaurant, ate a massive meal, and then said, "You want to do a bang bang?" And what a bang bang is in Louis' world is you go, you eat at a great restaurant, you eat a full meal, and you go get in your car and you drive right to the next restaurant to eat another meal. A bang bang. So give us a bang bang on YouTube. Go like, go subscribe, get us over 5K, help us grow the show. That's all we ever ask of you. It's not a lot in my mind, at least. So help us grow. Have a good rest of your day, and we'll talk to you soon.